Call to order, approval of minutes
Okay,
of the,
I move to approve.
I'll second. Actually, we have two. I say the 14th on the
14th.
agenda, but if everybody saw, we have two.
yes.
The 7th was the big meeting, right?
Right, both, and we have, everybody had the 7th and the 14th. So, Michaela, you want to start?
Yep, I'm Michaela. Hi.
Hello, hello.
Aye.
I, for the meeting I was at,
All right, and for the meeting that you read the minutes of?
looked great. Aye.
You approach. Both, I, Warner.
Aye, Patrick.
Okay, very good. So Patrick, you're next on the agenda.
I'm going to defer to Michael.
Michael,
Update
we're
on the
always
finance.
happy to have you here.
There was a preliminary meeting held about the playground with O'Brien's and Johanna representing the PAC. What is it?
PCA.
PCA, sorry, I had that wrong. The PCA about playground designs. They weren't able to get all the Zoom working. There was some, I guess there were 3 original plans that they've been bantering around, but those were based on 200, 150,000 for installation. Right now we have 30,000 for purchase and installation. I know that it was mentioned that they were looking for the possibility of some donated work. So right now, it's, right now we have 30,000, unless there is donated work and certificates of insurance from whoever's doing the work. Those are the conditions that Construct put on it, which is understandable. They would want a contractor with a certificate of insurance and the rest for that project. One of the concerns that was brought up is that the area that's being proposed is not big enough for what they want.
Who's they?
The PCA is requesting. So, because one of the elements is swings. So where they currently are, there's the old playground structure, then there are the flower beds. So what I've done is I have sent a request to Kathy Wiggins asking if they would consider another location on the site where swings could be located. So it could be the possibility of swings in another location and the 25 by 30 foot area for some type of structure. I'm not sure if the PCA group agrees with that or not, but at this point, what I'm doing is working within the confines of the owner of the property, which is Construct. That request actually went out this morning, requesting that the would they consider a site for swings. So modern swings, you have to have twice the distance as the height of the swing, and that's from the swing seat to the top of the bar. So if it's an 8-foot swing, you need 16 feet forward and 16 feet back.
Whoa.
Wow. Wow.
32 total feet. So swings, and swings are very popular with kids, but if you go to put in swings, you need that area, plus you need, after the width of the swings, you need 6 feet to either side.
Oh, man.
So you can easily end up with a 30 by 30 area for swings. You know, that's the way swings have to be put in when you're putting in new swings. So I've made the request to Construct and I will go from there. My next step is then to confirm that we're gonna work in these 2 locations and then proceed with going out and getting this done. O'Brien's is checking which state contractors, 2 of them, one's with the municipal. There's an
Higher ed.
NHC one and an FAC one, and which one we can operate under. I want to make sure, because this is coming out of ARPA funds, so it involves the federal government, so I just want to make sure that we're working under a contract that would cover us, and they were having their procurement person get back to me on that. So once we confirm that, which contract we most likely will be able to proceed with O'Brien's, but it will be within the confines that are laid out by.
And you mentioned a $50K minimum budget. And is there a plan to close that funding that you know?
O'Brien's can build it for whatever dollar amount and whatever space amount it is. The PCA has spoken with O'Brien's and had their ultimate wish, which was 200,000, a steel
Right, but-
plant one at 100, and then one at 50.
But none of those are within the current scope of the budget.
No.
And are we going to, what's the time frame on making a decision as to whether there's
There
others?
really isn't a time frame at this point, because right now, to maximize the dollar amount, the PCA was trying to look for volunteer company that would install
Okay.
it. So I don't know if that's feasible or not. I don't know if the committee wants to look at throwing in on other funds, but you could definitely put swings in and then elements in that 25 by 30 area for 30,000. If you want to go more, playgrounds can be, like I said, the one that I put in prior to this was a $200,000 one up at Windsor Lake in North Adams. Included porous blacktop paths to it, the fall zone protection. It was one of those more European ones, the rope ones, and it created climbing, and that was, not your traditional playground. But if you can, like I said, playground elements can be as great or as small as you want. Right now, I'm just working within the 30,000 of ARPA funds. I know there was some question of whether or not this committee was gonna maintain the 10,000 from the housing, affordable housing trust money.
Because we did approve that, didn't we?
Michael, a question to you. I believe at our last meeting, we voted to approve $10,000 for a playground equipment installation. And as I understand it, that motion's been ignored. And we have not been involved. This project's been taken over by the town and you, and not without any collaboration or even conversation with our group. So is that the way things are going to work? This is the second time it's happened in which the committee, the trust, made certain votes to do things, and then all of a sudden, we were told, oh, the town's doing this, and we've been ignored twice now.
I don't see how you've been ignored. I'm not sure what other one you're referring to.
Well, we were allocated almost $200,000 in CPC funds until you stood up in front of CPC and suggested that they withdraw all of our funds and give it back to
I think
CPC.
that's a misrepresentation of what happened at that meeting.
Well, I was there, so, and I stood up.
too.
I know you
And
were.
the vote of the CPC was not, they were moving toward not granting and that, so.
Not granted, they'd already granted us the money. They'd already voted the money to us. And it was withdrawn, it was voted to withdraw. So my point is simply, the trust has been established in order to, we understand, to focus on whatever affordable housing happens in the town of Stockbridge. And now on two occasions, both under your leadership and Patrick, both of you together, we now, we vote to do a playground equipment for Pine Woods, and the next thing we hear is, oh, we're ignoring that. The town's providing 30,000 and we're in charge and you're in charge and we're not involved. I mean, is that the way it's going to continually go, Michael?
So I'm asking, right, the select board approved $30,000 for a playground from ARPA.
Which I understood was going to flow to the trust. That money was to flow to the trust and the trust was going to administer whatever happened with the playground. That, now I understand that's not the case, that you are not going to put those funds into the trust, but you're going to administer them yourself.
So all I'm ensuring is that the procurement of the project and the legality of the project happens. So if the trust wants to negotiate directly with Construct over locations in the PCA, you can, if that's the direction you want to go.
Was that the vote of the select board though?
What's that?
First of all,
That's a decision of the select board. The select board put forward $30,000 of ARPA funds and then tasked me with administering it. So if,
Could I ask a question? I thought that those ARPA funds, part of the reason the select board did that was because those ARPA funds expire at the end of December.
they have to be allocated, they only have to be spent by a year from December, I think.
yes, correct.
But I can, with your permission, I would like to frame this a little differently. One, we're looking at a project where that clearly the PCA has advocated for over a year. I've been talking to Joanne about this for a long time. And she's looking at a budget of $50,000 to $200,000. And personally, I think that when we have 200,000 in the bank to build housing, that spending $200,000 or even $50,000 on a playground is a little bit of a stretch for this
But I
board.
think, Patrick,
Well, I'm not done. I'm not finished.
We made a vote at our last meeting.
I am not finished.
$1,000.
All right. So of the 10,000 that I think that adding the 30 to the 10 is a fantastic idea to get us closer to the minimum of 50 that PCA is looking for. Now, looking at that giant differential between 10 and even the lowest cost budget of 50, as a gesture of support for this effort, I brought to my board $30,000 appropriation to build a playground. Now, it is never, ever going to be when we appropriate money that is town funds, taxpayer money, whether it's ARPA money or whether it's anybody else's money, there will never be a situation where we actually administer the funds. That is his job. He is the chief procurement officer. It is his job. We're volunteers. We don't know what the rules are, at least I don't, as to how we can and should be actually spending the money. Now, I don't want to speak for you, Michael, but I have no opinion on what should go into this playground. I just want to build the nicest playground we can. And I want to do it legally. But whether we're building a $2 million, project as part of a $20 million development, or whether we're building a $10,000 playground, the treasurer of the town and the town administrator are going to administer the funds. That is the way it has to work.
I don't think anyone has any disagreement with you on that. I think the issue that I found offensive, frankly, was, and Michael, you and I had a conversation on the street in which you completely dismissed me as if I were irrelevant, that when this trust votes to do something, which we did, and we had a very limited budget of $10,000, for which a very modest playground. Joanna knew that was the only money that we were going to allocate. And this concept of 200,000 is clearly, I think, outside the realm of everyone on this board. And I would think outside the realm of the select board, and whether it would be appropriate to spend that kind of money on a playground when the needs at Pinewoods are terrific. The problem that I have is simply the lack of collaboration. If you want this board to be active and involved, you can't have a vote by this board and then just have it overridden and acted. I mean, you said to me on the street, I think Jan was standing there, well, we're not going to do it the way you want to do it. It's not a matter of what I want to do. Michael, you did say that. Well, you had a witness.
I did have a witness, yes.
Yeah. Can I make a suggestion for how we move forward and try to move it to a more collaborative from here forward? I think that we've taken a vote for the 10,000. We know that even the 30,000 that is the town allocated is not what they optimally wanted. So I would suggest, why don't we redo our vote so that the 10,000 we continue to allocate towards the playground. We allocate it to construct. So, and because the community group there is not a 501, it's not an entity that we can.
Not yet,
the money
it's applying. It's applying.
Okay, but in the meantime, that we go ahead and do that with construct. And then we try to find some ways to engage us periodically in the process going forward so that we're not running it, but we're, involved to some extent in the design, if you want to be, along the way, so that we have some say about general direction.
But Jan, listen, we took a vote a month ago and O'Brien's wasn't calling the guy back. And then O'Brien's comes into a meeting that none of us could even connect to. I wasn't even in the meeting because it took a half an hour to connect to it and it wasn't possible to connect. And 3 presentations were made for 50 and 100 and 200,000 from what I'm hearing. We're not even at the point where we've seen a realistic design for the 30 or 40,000 that we have. And I think it's a little bit unfair to suggest that there hasn't been a collaborative process. We haven't even begun the process.
Okay, I'm not suggesting there hasn't been. I didn't say that.
No, but I did.
You did.
So I
But
would go on.
what I said was, I wanted to see if we couldn't move toward having it be a really collaborative process going forward. And I don't see any reason why we can't do that.
No, I don't, and I don't either. I've just taken offense to the fact that we aren't consulted. And I get a phone call saying, oh, by the way, Michael's taking care of it. You guys are out of it. And I happen to, only because of my personal relationship with Joanna and my concern for trying to have her needs met, that we even initiated this conversation here. And I think that if it was my understanding that the money, now you're saying the money is not going to get allocated to the trust. It's going to be allocated to some amorphous fund in the town? Is that the way it's going to work?
So the way that this project needs to go forward, Johanna and others will be stakeholders that are involved in the project. So the idea that they won't be is not true. It has to be identified first with construct as the area of land that they're going to allow construction on. Then they will be allotted then we will have a dollar amount for installation and purchase of equipment. O'Brien's then would take the locations, develop concepts that then can come back if you want it to this board, if you want it to the piece. I guess at the time I thought it was more of the PCA would be deciding which of the concepts they wanted to go with. And then it would be design and implementation of the project.
But
So
Michael,
it's a pretty simple process. There's only been one meeting about this.
the property's owned by Construct. The ultimate decider on this project is Construct. There's no way around that. Construct is the owner of the property. We can't move the playground as much as others might want to an area that Construct doesn't approve. We can't install things that we don't have permission to install. The property is owned by a private entity. All right. And I don't understand what this fight is about. We're trying to do a solid for the people of Construct to get them a playground. And we started off with 10 and we got it up to 40. And what the heck are we arguing over?
I think what we're trying to make clear, Patrick, is that it was done in such a way, it was initiated here. And then it's wonderful that you wanted to add the money, and we thought that was
That was the
terrific.
select board's decision.
That the select board wanted to add, of which Patrick sits on both. But wouldn't you have thought that it would have been proper to Patrick to come back to us? I mean, you said very specifically to me over the telephone, you're irrelevant. We're doing it, Michael's in charge and he's doing it.
I don't use words like irrelevant.
Well, you did.
I tend to
Did,
double
Patrick.
check.
Can we try to move forward?
I thank you, Jan, very much for that.
So
And I think
how
we should.
about, what?
Would you like to make a motion?
What
Because
I
we have a motion that's been made, seconded, and is standing to allocate $10,000, working directly with the PCA.
We're not doing that.
That's the vote that we have,
I
Patrick.
understand that's the vote we have.
That's the vote.
We can't legally
That is
give
the-
$10,000 to PCA.
That is the vote we have. It may not be appropriate, but it is the vote we have. So we need to, if we need.
Modify it.
Modify it, that's
All right,
appropriate.
I have a question then. If we combine the 30,000 ARPA money with the 10,000 that we were willing to spend from our account, hello,
Here she comes.
who administers and actually cuts a check, and to whom do they cut the check? I'm just kind of curious how the money,
So the town would just cut a $40,000 check, and we would hit the ARPA account, and we hit the housing trust fund.
and who would that check go to?
That check would go directly to the to O'Brien.
Vendor, but we haven't confirmed that.
Contracts and the rest under, so right now, we're gonna operate under one of the 2 state contracts for installation of playgrounds. And that will dictate the terms of procurement, which is a purchasing list.
And is Construct a party to the ultimate agreement since it's their
So what
property?
Construct has to do is identify, they've agreed to let the town install a playground. That's what they've agreed to, allow the town to install a playground. They have given us a location, a 25 by 30-foot area where the existing playground is. Because swings are something that the PCA wants, I have put in the request for an additional site that would allow the installation of swings.
Okay.
I am waiting to hear back if Construct would agree to that. If Construct agrees to that, then I would go back to O'Brien's and say, and if you vote the extra 10,000, I would say that we have $40,000 for design and installation and construction, or design and installation and purchase of the equipment. They then would look at the two areas, design the swings and design the other area with proper fall protection and the rest, and then work with a contractor to get the entire project done.
Right. So I think we need a process here that sort of engages all the stakeholders in coming up with the ultimate design so that the tenants are pleased, that we're involved, that Construct is pleased, and perhaps yourself. And then, so we're all stakeholders, we're all in agreement, and then we proceed and we pick a choice and then we cut the checks and the kids get on the swings.
And I've been involved in various projects like this, whether it's design of a school playground when we built schools, both when I was in Williamstown and in North Adams. What would happen here is once Construct agrees to the two locations, I would go to O'Brien's and ask them to come up with designs and potential equipment in each of these sites within our budget for these two sites. I would then bring them back, and that's where I would engage the stakeholders, the PCA group and this group.
Yeah.
But at this point, there's only been, this idea that's been hijacked. There was one meeting set up by the PCA to review 3 designs that were all outside of the allocations regardless of what we have. And outside of the size area that's been allotted by Construct.
I think, Michael, that what we are very pleased is you have the experience in putting together a playground, which I don't think any one of us has the expertise to build a playground. We have other capabilities. So the issue is not your competence or the appropriateness, because everything that happens through us happens through the check being written and approved by you. I believe her name's Elizabeth, Erica. So in terms of the way the money flows, I think the issue is that if the town, when the select board made an allocation of $30,000, it was done without any collaboration with the trust that had initiated the program. And that's the part that I think we need to get really clear, that either the trust is going to be an effective organization or it's going to be an ignored organization. And if it's going to be an ignored organization, there's probably not many of us.
That's a false, I
interested.
think that's a false dichotomy or whatever the word is. It's not about ignored or, 10 grand was clearly not enough. We went to the mat and got Pine Woods an extra 30 grand. It's a win. I don't know why you're not taking the win and you're taking it personally. There is procurement laws around this stuff and we're not ever going to break them. All right. And I couldn't care less I don't have any opinion on what the contents of this playground are because I have no expertise in this area. I don't even have any children, let alone grandchildren. I completely defer to whoever the people at Construct or PCA or you or whoever wants to design this as it is. All I care about is that we follow the law as to how we procure it.
So the next step on your process was to hear back from Construct to approve the locations.
If they would add a location
All right.
Large enough to provide swings.
Right. And you're in touch with them on this decision?
Yeah.
All right.
If they say yes to that, then I would ask O'Brien's now to
Right.
design, if you agree to put 10,000 more in, $40,000 for the design, equipment purchase and installation of the playground equipment. They would then look at the two sites that are available, design it, come up with multiple designs.
Can you work single source with, you
Yes.
can, you can work with O'Brien's.
Under MH, but I am confirming that, which I said I was. So if I can work directly with O'Brien's through the Mass State contract under the MHC, then I would be able to come back to you guys and say, here's O'Brien's, they're the professionals, they've laid out these 4 different options within 40,000 for these 2 sites. Then the PCA and this board would then act on it. This would be no different than any other project we're doing with design of roadways or anything else. We get original concept designs and the rest, then I would bring them to the select board. So I think what you're assuming is this is much further along than it actually is. It's right at the beginning steps.
So I'm assuming what I was told. So I think you want to make a,
So I'd like to make a proposal that we modify our vote from last time so that it's the same $10,000, but it goes to construct,
No.
No.
O'Brien. Playground project.
to the playground project through the town. So that it will be part of it, along with the 30,000 would make a total of 40.
Liz, did you get that?
something like that, right?
Okay.
I'm not
Do
that,
we have a second?
A second.
Good. All those in favor?
aye.
Any further discussion?
We have to go, or if anybody wants any further discussion, I think we've killed this one pretty badly.
Well, the only thing I would say is that I think the idea that when O'Brien's gets back to you, that we collaborate on it
You're absolutely a stakeholder at that.
totally, and everybody will feel good about it, and we'll go from there. So
Yeah.
I think we're well on the way to getting this solved, and hopefully the 40,000 can buy something good for the kids.
Yeah.
Because it seems, 200,000 seems like, what?
That was their pie in the sky. Joanne
Yeah.
even said that. That was their pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100 and then
Yeah.
50.
All right.
Okay,
I think, so
so we need to vote.
we have a vote. Michaela,
Michaela,
Hi, Michaela.
Jan, aye.
Mark, aye.
Randy, aye.
Liz, aye.
Patrick, aye.
Okay.
All right. Passes.
Sorry.
Moving around. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Michael.
I think Karen, you're first.
Oh, okay. And before you start, Karen, I sent out last Wednesday Karen's note summarizing the workshop. And so I hope I have copies of that here if you didn't have a chance to look at it.
I did.
I didn't bring a copy,
See it
but
anyway.
I'll take one.
Okay, and then Karen's going to go through with us her summary, and I think there are a few questions, right, Karen, that you had along the way.
So
Sorry.
what I did was look at all the sheets where there were recorded comments from the workshop and did my best to pull together kind of a reasonable summary. I mean, not every group did every question. Groups kind of tackle things differently. I think that's fine. You know, they went with their own kind of flow, and we got some good results from every group. But it seemed like the answers to the questions that were most evident had to do with the list of housing needs and particular actions. And also we got some input on kind of the biggest obstacles related to new housing. And so what I did was just kind of put together a list of items that were discussed. If there was any kind of little positive stickers, I put the number in parentheses. If there was like the little dots in opposition, I added that. Just kind of put a list that was weighted by the number of votes. I had a couple questions based on what was recorded on the sheet that I didn't quite understand. And under what are the housing needs for Stockbridge? There's a whole range of things that were listed. The one question I had was under empower individuals. I wasn't sure what that specifically meant with respect to housing. And, you know, I didn't want to just disregard the comment because it seems like empower individuals, we're all for that. But if there was somebody in the group who knew what that meant, that would be helpful.
Do you have this?
The only insight, Karen, I could give
Just
you.
share it.
Is I had a very lengthy conversation
I
with the
can't
woman
share anything.
after the large meeting.
Yeah.
While others were meeting in smaller groups. And I think it could be, this was a woman who spent a lot of money with lawyers in order to be able to put a second auxiliary or to make a two-family house out of her lot. And she felt strongly that it should have been of right. So,
Did she have to go to court to do this?
no, but she had to spend $5,000 with a local lawyer to appear before, I don't know how many different boards. Anyway, it was a very personal thing, and she needed someone to listen to her, so I did. But that's the only insight I could give you, is that she felt she should have not had to go to the expense of hiring a lawyer to appear before the board to get the right. She was ultimately granted the right to have an auxiliary unit on her property for her son to live in.
So it relates to advocacy, so kind of
Well-
empowering individuals to advocate for themselves with respect to
I think
rules
it's,
and regulations.
no, I think it's rights. I think it's more about that the zoning should have been, that everybody, her particular issue is that
Yeah.
everybody should have of right to have a two-family on their property.
No, yeah, that's, okay, so maybe we move
Well,
that.
it's not dissimilar from what I've said before, which is like the barrier to entry is made more difficult a lot of the time, whether it's conservation, which is understandable, but there's always like, if you want to do anything with your property in this town, whether it's, I mean, we reduced the footprint of our property and it took 4 months just to be able to start. You know what I mean? Like it just, and permits and costs. So I don't totally disagree with that. I mean, I think it's really prohibitive in a lot of ways. And there's already, we talk about young families coming in, but you know, it's hard enough to buy here, but then if you have to spend $5,000 to $10,000 in permits just to, or lawyers' fees just to start, that's hard.
It's certainly not fit into your budget when you're thinking about it
No,
either.
because you don't even know that's gonna be a thing.
Right, so you wind up with a house and then the things you want to do cost you much more than you thought they would.
Yeah, or you can't do it, you know what I mean? You
Right.
can't make, and it's sometimes not even aesthetic things, it's safety things. It's, you know.
Look, the advice we've gotten from town council is that the section of the zoning bylaw that governs pre-existing non-conforming lots is section 6.12 of the zoning bylaw. And it gives the select board the ability to approve special permits that are on properties like yours, that you probably don't have 2 or 4 acres, whatever it is up there. Michaela, I have a sense of where you live. And so our bylaw requires us to have a special permit. And yet at the same token, the advice we've been given by town council is that if it's not more non-conforming, that we must approve it. All right. So it actually makes absolutely no sense to force folks to go through the legal process of having a special permit application process when in fact the select board doesn't have any flexibility if it's not more non-conforming to approve it anyway. It's a crazy contradiction. All right. Having said that, this is a relatively simple change in the bylaw that I think that we have to approach. I'm not sure it's relevant. It's relevant to the kind of workforce missing middle, not so much the affordable housing side. But, you know, I do think that it is something that the town should spend some time fixing because it's ridiculous, frankly, that on these micro lots where folks could basically take their footprint and do something. We're never going to get around if there's wetlands issues on the property. We're never going to get around that. People are going to have to go into Concom and make their case, and sometimes that's going to involve engineers, probably not lawyers, but at least engineers. But certainly on the special permits, this is not a hard problem to fix, and we don't have any flexibility anyway.
Just so I understand it, you're saying if something is already non-conforming, that you don't even have the ability to add to the non-conformance?
No, what I'm saying is that the bylaw 61.12 gives the select board the ability to say may. We may approve. Okay, so that means you can go from non-conforming to more non-conforming. In my recent history on the board, since I've been on the board, we generally take a cold hard look at making lots more non-conforming. We feel it's, the board you're on, it's the zoning board of appeals, I can't speak for the other selectmen, so at least my opinion that hardship should go to the zoning board of appeals. What I'm talking about is when it's not more non-conforming, we could deny it, but the lawyers are saying we'll lose every time in court. All right, so it doesn't make any sense that people should have to go through a special permit when the select board doesn't have any flexibility to say yes or no. We have to say yes. If, you know, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And that addresses what Michaela's talking about.
So what's the process for changing that bylaw? Which board is it?
It's the planning board and the select board. And it's on my list.
Okay.
If it's a bylaw, though, does it have to go to the town meeting?
Everything has to go to the town meeting. Yeah.
So it has to start with the planning board.
No, it can start with either select board or the planning board.
We're together.
And this is something I've had on, seriously, but had been on my priority list for at least a year and a half. Yeah.
So help me understand if the select board only has the option, if there's two check boxes, yes and no, and the select board only has the option of checking one, why is there even a process for somebody?
Exactly.
Well, but you do have the option to check no. It's just if they take it farther, they're probably going to lose.
The select board would
Going to lose?
Right.
And spend a lot.
And they would spend another 5 or 10 grand preparing for the zoning board of appeals. I mean,
Well, I don't know. I usually spent my life going through the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And so there really is no option.
there's no option to say no that's reasonable, because the law says if it's not more non-conforming, that there's no basis for the denial. So it's just one of those, like, it's a bylaw that was written 40 or 50 years ago that needs to be updated. And it doesn't just affect families like Michaela's. Every single person, 70% of the lots of this town are pre-existing non-conforming. Anybody who wants to renovate their house is spending money they don't need to spend to hire attorneys to represent a process, which literally gets rubber stamped every time. I have never seen one get denied. That is, and I've been doing this now for 4 years.
As long as we're not changing the footprint.
As long as you're not becoming more non-conforming, that means setbacks, that means front side setbacks, that means increasing the non-conformity of the footprint or the mass, which is basically the square footage,
So
the height.
But you want to put on an addition, and then yes, you do.
Yeah, so one of the things as we move forward in our discussions about the housing production plan that we can address is this something that this group ought to be involved with or not? Because I think that clearly the planning board and the select board have to be involved with it. And it may be an element in whatever plan we come up with, but it may not be the main
We can
feature.
endorse it. I mean,
Yeah,
that-
we can make a
I think
recommendation.
From our side, we would endorse it because it does cut the costs for people. It makes it a bit more affordable. That's the stance we should.
But it's not really an affordable issue. It's an issue for anybody who wants to modify a non-conforming lot. So we could weigh in on it and say there would also be a benefit to affordability issues, but it has nothing to do with affordable housing. Because affordable housing is not subject to local zoning.
Right.
No, but
Yeah.
just from our
Right.
side.
Affordability,
Sense if we're going
what
to
Michaela's
endorse something,
originally
it's
saying.
because it's
Yeah.
going to cut those costs.
But I don't want you to ask for a refund, Michaela. We're not giving you a refund.
Okay, fair.
Some affordable
We won't
housing
ask for-
is subject to local
Affordability.
rent, so,
What? Yeah.
So it's, yeah. All right, that's helpful. Thank you. The other comments or question I had was on what are the biggest obstacles related to new housing? And it was affordability, make money versus live here, money versus goals. And I'd had a hard time kind of clarifying that statement in a meaningful way. Anybody remember that as part of their group? No?
Well, it sounds like if you want to make money, you have to leave.
Yeah.
Make money in what way?
Well, there are not a lot of high-paying jobs here for younger families.
I dispute that.
That may have come out of
I don't understand.
my group, where the guy that, I'm blanking on his name now, the guy that was there lives in Pine Woods.
Yes, yes,
His wife just got a job.
yeah.
And so he's now concerned that with the addition of his wife's salary on top of his, he was going to be forced out, they were going to be forced out of Pine Woods
Income limit issue.
because they exceeded they were going to exceed the income the income limit. And,
Might have to leave town.
and they were going to have to leave town because they couldn't afford anything else here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
That answers that
So
question.
that was his issue.
Yeah.
And it's a really relevant one. I mean, to some degree, you'd think that there should be some grandfathering of people that have been living there and working just because, their spouse gets a job. But I don't.
That's federal law is there's income on rentals, there's income limits and they have to reapply every year. Now,
People who want to get in there whose incomes are
Okay.
are lower
I get
than
it.
this.
Okay, so
And there's
that,
a big cushion, I tried to explain to him, there's a big cushion, based on the income you needed to actually occupy the unit and the income that you would need in order to have to leave an affordable unit. So you don't often see people really exceeding it in a very short time frame. But nevertheless,
and looking at Grove Street, and are you guys familiar with the Grove Street property? I think it's 19 Grove Street in Great Barrington. That was a Habitat for Humanity property. It's going through the lottery right now. You got to qualify to buy it. There's no, in an ownership situation, you then own it till you sell it. Now, there's going to be some limits on your upside to sell it. But if the issue of what you're addressing is important to this board, then as we balance if we're going to build anything, home ownership versus rental properties, then certainly, looking at kind of getting, let's say, a young family in when we're starting the process where they qualify, and then over time, if they're getting a raise or whatever, or he gets married, or, she gets married or whatever, they're not going to be forced out of that home. They're going to be there. They won't be able to flip it and double their money, but at least that first home ownership, they'll build credit.
right.
They'll make 5 or 10%, whatever. And as their first home, it's a way to kind of, preserve that housing for someone who's got maybe more long-term in the community. And Liz, I think just to the point that you raised, I think, 80% AMI for a family of 4 is what, 80 grand? That is within the range of what a teacher is making, or what even a police officer, certainly a fireman, absolutely an EMT. There's a lot of jobs that pay enough if we build a house using the habitat model and there's a lot of people who will have a path to home ownership who work in this community who are going to make less than 80% AMI for a family of 3 or 4. Family of 3, I think it's 72,000. Family of 4, or it's 70,000. These are numbers that are well below what municipal employees by and large earn. So there's I think there's when we talk about high paying jobs, I think when we're looking at missing middle and we're looking at affordable home ownership, we really have a lot of progress we can make without worrying about the jobs economy. Beyond that, we're looking at maybe, if we're lucky, 30 to 50 units over our tenure on this board. And there's 130,000 people who live in this county. And we're going to have an impact, but it's not going to market move in terms of worrying about the macro forces around jobs are just not,
No, but we can have a small impact in our.
Yeah, well, it's great.
And it's a national problem that's going to have to be solved on the local level in thousands of communities, coast to coast, because this is happening everywhere.
everywhere,
Sure.
And
especially in communities that have a high seasonal
Yeah.
population.
but I feel like we have a structure that's designed to give us what we have, which is not enough housing for people of modest means.
Yeah.
And unless that structure is changed or we intervene in some way, nothing will change.
Right.
Right. And that's happening at boards.
What's that famous saying? Every process is designed to give you exactly the results it was intended to do.
Well, I don't know what the intention was when all the 2 and 4 acre zoning was put in place, but it's ended up resulting in what we are facing now, which is a dire situation for many, many people. And I feel like we've arrived at a point where well-to-do, older people are getting just what they want in this town, and nobody else is. That workers, young people, lower-income people just can't get in.
Right.
And I feel like the way it's set up, we've shut the doors. And a lot of people are doing just fine with what they've got, and they're not sharing the bounty. And this is the obligation we have to the next generation and to the future of the town. Who's going to be sitting around this table in 10 years?
Yes,
Gonna be just,
yes,
you know,
Mark, yes.
Who's it going to be?
Us with a lot more.
I mean, we talk, Joe and I talk about this all the time. That's 100% correct.
And there's just
100%
this, I think, a philosophical overview that just, we just have to bash down some things and move in some other directions of whether it's the accessory units or converting into two-family homes, picking off properties that have been abandoned and trying to get a habitat model in there so that people can own something and not get booted out. Or, the route that some of the other towns have gone is some larger thing where you've got 40 units and 10 or 12 of them are affordable and the others are market or whatever that combination is, which is a huge impact on a community like ours, as opposed to picking off some smaller things and trying to get a family here and a family there. But
All the above.
we have just got to blow down the doors on a lot of this stuff, or we're just not going to get anywhere.
To some degree, this discussion is reminiscent of when I first got to Massachusetts after doing my residency training in Southern California, where anything old was something that was more than a month ago, and everything was new. And I got to Newton Wellesley Hospital and working in the emergency department, and I basically tried to bring some of what I learned in my residency program there, and the staff would basically say to me, well, we can't do that. Why? Because we've never done it that way.
Yeah.
Too bad. Just because we've never done it that way doesn't mean we can't do it that way, nor that it's the right thing to do. And that's exactly what we're seeing here is, we've got all these obstacles that have been thrown in front, that are basically in front of us because of bylaws that are 40 to 50 years old or other antiquated things that no longer apply.
Yeah.
And we need to basically think outside the box and move away from them and figure out which of those things need to be knocked down or modified so that we can do what needs to be done. And I love the video that Randy sent out.
Yeah, that was
about
terrific.
the Adirondacks. I mean, whether we take a road trip to the Adirondacks or whether we ask, Steve and Kylie, I think her name was, or Kyle, to come
Zoom in to us? They can zoom in.
to see what we can do. But I think there's properties that we could acquire or find a way to acquire and put 40 or 50 houses up there in that $180,000 to $240,000 range that would become more affordable for the people that we're talking about. And basically create a community.
Doesn't build it, but yeah.
What's that?
No, yeah.
No, I mean, Habitat has to come up with, when they can offer somebody a house for 200,000,
They come up with a difference of what it
they
costs.
have to come up with the difference.
Oh, we do. Somebody does.
Somebody does. And that's how those little miracles can happen.
So can I ask that we move forward on a couple of this? Because I wanted us to get to what I hoped would be our main discussion today, which is to hear from each of us
Yeah.
what we think are the three highest priority things we should try to pursue as part of a housing production plan. And that would be kind of, I know we won't have kind of clear agreement, and some of them will include elements of what you were both just talking about, but I think it would be useful to have us get on the table kind of today, what are the three highest priorities you think we should include in a plan? Because I think coming out of that, we will inevitably have other things we want to explore, find out more information on, maybe make assignments for who's going to do that over the next month. And we will see whether we have agreement on what are the highest priority things, or we have no agreement, in which case we need to figure out a way.
I think that the zoning discussion is separate from the building discussion or this,
Yes.
the actual housing discussion. I mean, I think we've got two buckets that we have to set some priorities on.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking, in the three priorities that I was referring to, I don't think we're talking about actions like changing the zoning laws. I think we're talking about what are we trying to identify in terms of housing initiatives?
Zoning is important
Yeah, I
though,
was
too,
gonna
to
say, you
include in
can't-
this plan.
You can't separate it.
I've got Stockbridge.
It's
really important.
I think
it's a
they're-
mechanism maybe for how.
I think
to
any
accomplish-
idea you come up with is going to bang into the zoning.
Yeah.
It has to.
If I could just,
Well, I think the issue, you know, there's two issues with zoning from my perspective. One is global zoning law changes, which obviously can be significantly problematic and have.
What does a
some-
global change mean?
Well, I mean, changing the acreage requirements, for example.
In the whole town?
For the whole
For the whole town.
Okay.
Why would we-
That's what I mean by a global. Something that applies to the entire town, which would be an incredibly difficult, if not impossible discussion and probably take forever to get done. Or if there's a way to create separate, certain exclusions to the zoning laws that would be applicable to a particular environment, a particular property that, you know, that we identify as something that could be utilized. And some of it, I know because of 40B, we don't necessarily need zoning changes, as Patrick has educated me. But others may. But I don't see any reason why we need to think about zoning like this versus zoning in a narrow, focused manner that it only addresses a place, an identified location where we think we can basically have constructed some affordable housing.
Well, this
Could I
is why the
suggest-
friendly
yeah.
40B
Right,
that
but
we talked about.
in
I'm
order,
sorry.
in order to focus, excuse me for interrupting you, but in order to focus this discussion, I think I'd like to start and time the discussion with only what our ideas are for what I call regulations, as such as, what, 612, is that what you've already mentioned that one. Things that people feel we could focus on or we feel are priorities. And I would add,
From a housing point of view.
from housing, exactly.
But I also really hoped what we could do was focus on what are the objectives we ought to be
Yeah.
identifying for what housing, like,
Why don't you go first?
Yeah, what are your three?
okay.
Because I think what you can do is identify all these things we'd like to accomplish and then see what we run into with them. And that's when
Yeah.
the zoning issues will arise, I think.
Yeah, and some of the other mechanisms that would be.
Okay, terrific.
So I would say the three that I would identify that should be our priorities over the next 5 years would be, one, to work collaboratively with, and this isn't necessarily in this priority, but the three top ones, I would say, to work collaboratively with the town and Construct to do renovations that are really needed at Pine Woods. So that would be one objective. Second, that I would like to see us identify possibly a property, and I gather there are 2, 3, maybe even 4 around town that has enough acreage that we could do a development that would include maybe some capital A affordable housing, but would include small a affordable housing for the missing middle or for the kind of middle range
How
that we're
many
talking
units do you
about.
envision in something like that?
I haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
So, but just, and it would be in part determined by what property we could identify and
Okay.
what it could accommodate.
Good, yeah.
So that would be my second one. And I think the third one would be to maybe work with identifying a few houses that we could work through with Habitat with Humanity, and that may be over the next 5 years. I don't know, a total of
Yeah.
3 houses. I have no idea.
Yeah,
So those would
I
be
think
my
that's great.
3.
yeah.
Bruce, why don't you go next? And then we'll go around the table this way.
Well, my first priority would be your second one, which is identifying a parcel that would allow us to do something akin to what they did in the Adirondacks.
That's multi-unit place then.
They're single-family homes, but
Single
they're
family, but a lot of them, several of them.
50.
Yeah,
They have
okay.
50 on their site, and, depending upon how much space we wanted to give them, some of the properties I think that are available could probably accommodate 40 to 50, and move to home ownership with the stipulations similar to what they described, what Steve described in that YouTube video, where there are restrictions so that when those individuals wanted to sell, it didn't just become open to the marketplace for a second homeowner that wanted to come in and have a place to spend their summer.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
Yep.
And so that would be, my number one priority. And I think that the issue of Habitat for Humanity is sort of a subset of that candidate. I don't think it's actually a separate priority, because that's essentially what they do, although there are some differences in, and in keeping, particularly with the Habitat for Humanity issue, since there are issues of additional contribution to the cost of building the property, is addressing the sweat equity issue, which came up in some of the conversations that we had in our breakout sessions, where someone like the guy from Pine Woods that was in my group, who has the capability to do things, to, partially build his own house or to take care of it, that could basically be folded into his ability to, get into that affordable house. By basically doing some of the work that needed to be done in order to complete that process. And then I think we need to, my third priority, not necessarily in decreasing order, is to make sure that, any of those things that we do address the issue of the people that serve us and our community and our town, and they're having the ability to live in town and not be forced to travel far or to live outside.
That's a prioritization more than that's basically how you prioritize the lottery. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent.
Michaela, would you like to go next?
I don't know how, let me say, I don't know how specific I will want to be with this, but I do think the first thing, I just kind of want to, my first instinct and feeling is, I feel like it's hard to identify these actions if there is no, right now, there doesn't feel like there's a shared vision for what this town is. And I know that that's a big ask. But it feels to me, and and this is said with all due respect, this is part of the reason why Joe and I moved to Stockbridge, is I love the charm of it. I love the nostalgia of it. I love the small town feel of it. But there's always a lot of, I hear a lot of comments of like, it's how it used to be. And when we were kids, and the thing is, I think there's not as much of an acknowledgement of like, the difference in the world and where we are and what is becoming a crisis, what is needed to solve these problems. So I wonder what the shared vision of the town is for the people on all of these boards that we serve on, because I feel like without that, we don't know what we're driving towards. So that's my first thought. I feel like one thing we could do, and one thing I wish other boards would do in town, is just get more expert voices in the room. I mean, I feel like all of us have aspects of our backgrounds that are useful here. I look to that. I mean, honestly, in that meeting that we had, like that guy, Michael, on the Zoom, I was like, I appreciated, Patrick, that you reached out to him, because like, we should be engaging that guy. He should be on this committee. Like he has a background in this, and he was excited about the possibility of being part of it. You know what I mean? Like, those are things that I feel like I think we're trying to fix new problems with people who have done wonderful work in the town for a long time, but are those the voices to now solve the new problems? And I don't know if that is the case. And I have to just say, and I say that with respect, because I appreciate those people and I appreciate the work that they've done, but I do feel like I get we talk about zoning. Zoning's a big word. It can be a scary word. So we have to get specific, like Bruce is saying. But then I read Stockbridge updates where at the very bottom, it says, we can do a lot of other things before we consider zoning changes. But what are those other things? And it's like, those are the people making the decisions. So if we're spending our time around these tables talking about zoning, but then the people literally making the decisions are in their non-biased report saying, we don't want to talk about zoning, what are we doing?
Who's the we there?
Stockbridge update.
No, but who was that? I don't think I saw that one.
It
Who
was,
was
I
the-
think it was last week's or the week before, but there was a sentence at the bottom that was an editorial, part of an editorial, and it was just saying, I think we can, zoning is not something we should consider. We should be thinking of other things. So these are the things that I just feel like we're trying to solve new problems, but we're not bringing in new voices to add, or those voices aren't being enabled.
Right. But I mean, Michaela, we look around this table and this board, other than the select board, is the only board that is an appropriations board in the whole town.
Totally.
All right.
No,
And I'm looking
totally.
at,
And
I'm just counting around the room. I got one, you, Bruce, Mark, Randy and Jan. 5 of the voices around this table, well, Mark served on board before, at least 4 of them are new voices. And this board has tremendous flexibility in the deployment of actual money that no other board other than the select board has. So I just want to kind of say that this is how,
that's fair. No,
this
I
is
totally
how we
think-
accomplish what you're saying.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair. And I think it just feels a little bit like that we also though we don't have full jurisdiction over what we do with this money, it seems. And so that's what I'm saying. Is I feel like at the ultimate end of the day, there are a couple specific boards that hold a lot of sway. And it would be nice to if they would reach out to more, whether someone's on the board or not, just more expert voices in what they're discussing.
Once again, to clarify, I'm on the select board and I can't do anything with regard to ARPA was a once in a lifetime thing. Everything else goes through town meeting. I can't spend a nickel without an appropriation line item that is approved by the voters, all right? Nobody else can either in this town except this board. This board has $200,000 and possibly upwards of $2.5 million that it takes 5 out of 7 votes to decide how to spend, and it doesn't need anybody's approval. This board is an appropriations board with tremendous authority. And I just want to kind of reiterate or reinforce to you that, this exercise that we're going through right now on this prioritization list, this is how we will spend the money that flows into this from a wide variety of sources, CPC or inclusionary bylaw or other sources.
Michaela, I think I understand where you're coming from on some of your comments. I'm still curious, though, about and there may be a pathway forward when we identify what are the things we really want to do to move them forward without, obstacles along the way that are insurmountable. So, but I'm still not clear, what are the things that you would say are the highest priorities from your perspective with this new approach of what's needed in Stockbridge?
Well, I agree. I think what Patrick's talking about with, that specific bylaw, things that we can actually make those adjustments on that makes sense. I think those kind of small things will add up. So I would go in that direction. And I would also say, Jan, your idea in talking about, if we had a parcel, what do we do with that? And I think more specifically, how do we utilize that to be an example for other communities? Like, how can we combine forward-thinking sustainability as part of that? And I know that that also, and how do we do that in a way that acknowledges preservation being part of the town's charm, that aesthetically, what are the things we can do that really allow that to be something of pride for the town. So I think, I don't know if like 50 units is going to be, that's a lot. And if that could happen, that's great. But I think that's something that could definitely be accomplished if a specific parcel was designated.
Yeah, it would certainly take it would take quite a parcel, which I don't know if we have even
But
access to.
I do want to say, I think like the town is made up of these big, beautiful homes, which is awesome. I don't think those fit the lifestyle of how people live now.
Right.
They're too expensive. The electricity is too expensive. People my age don't want to buy houses that big. They're too much to take care of and the investment is too large. And so maybe there's a way to be more, to consolidate that still fits the aesthetic of the town as
Right.
well.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all, those are really
Thank
good
you.
points.
Thank you. Mark?
I totally agree with a lot of what you said, Michaela, and I think you're raising the question of whether people who grew up watching Ozzie and Harriet can solve today's problems. I grew up in a household.
Hey, wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Wait a minute.
I grew up in a household where my father worked, my mother was home. Families could do this stuff then. They could buy houses, they could get cars. I graduated from college and not owing a nickel. I mean, everything has changed. And we have rules in place that reflect more the Ozzie and Harriet era than we do the contemporary problems that people are facing. And housing is one of the big ones. Education, a big one. Healthcare, a big one. Anything that an American has to do is very expensive. You can go load up your car with crap from China at the Walmart and it's great. But anything that an American has to touch is really expensive, and housing is at the heart of that for a lot of people. And my three things would be increasing the ability to do two-family homes, converting single to two or develop two-family homes. We need units, places for people to live, many more of them. And I don't mean to overrun the town and turn it into some kind of suburb. There's plenty of pockets we can find to do some development of housing without changing the basic character of the community, which we don't want to change. We all love that, but we're shutting people out of it. I don't know where the ADUs stand. I ran for the planning board more than 2 years ago. ADUs were being discussed at that time. Nothing seems to have happened. Maybe I can be corrected by some of my colleagues on the board, but again, it's an avenue for creating units. Okay, some of them might be rented out as Airbnbs, but we shouldn't stop at trying to create more units. And there's a wonderful ADU being developed over on Pine Street right now. It looks great from the street. There's a house there. Right behind it, there was some kind of a barn. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, she came to us.
And okay, so there was a crappy old barn there, that's down, and a wonderful house has gone up. I suspect it's going to be rented out as an ADU, but
No, it's not.
No, the intention is for local.
for local housing, beautiful.
Actually,
She will have her office.
Now I love it even
Better
better.
than that, the select board was the permitting authority on that. The developer, the owner of that property is a woman named Linda Shafroff. And I called Linda and I wasn't going to make a condition of my vote, but I asked her if she would consider as part of the permit that it could not be used as a short-term rental, that it would have to be a non-short-term rental. And this is a woman who, in developing 6 units over by Housatonic Street in Lenox, actually designated 2 of them to be affordable and had no reason to do it other than she understands the problems that the area faces. And it took her about 2 seconds to agree to do it. And that went into the permit. So
It looks great, and
a lot of folks can be part of a solution here. And I think we owe a thanks to Linda. She was actually at our session. I don't know if you all met her.
Well, I like the idea that you can even put a condition on like that, because then that can help direct things. Again, we have to intervene to push the marketplace to what we want, because by itself, it won't do it.
Right.
It'll do what it's doing. We have to shove it where we want it. And that's one way to do it, a condition on putting an ADU back there. to make it a rental for a full-time resident. And there's plenty of parking. It's great. I think it's a wonderful unit. I go by it all the time walking my dog. Also, the idea of having 30, 40 houses get built in any parcel around this town seems to me to be an overreach. I don't think it can happen. I don't know what the space situation was over in the Adirondacks. I thought the video was great, and I thought the whole concept was wonderful. But realistically, how much can we shove into a place in this town? I'm not sure. I came across some examples of what were called pocket developments, 6, 8, 10 units. They don't have a huge impact on the community, and I've seen pictures of them,
I
and
have
they're
lots of good examples.
really nice designs.
Yeah.
I mean, these things look really good. They're smaller, maybe they're 1,200 feet houses. They might be 2 or 3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Great for starter housing and downsizing. You can
Yeah,
do rentals and
exactly.
homeownership.
So, but nobody, with our 2 and 4 acre zoning, that's impossible to do.
No.
So, but here's my approach. Instead of looking at it, oh, we got to do something about zoning, let's come up with our list of priorities and our ideas and then see where we run into the zoning problems.
Right.
And then try to solve them at that point.
Amen.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, instead of trying to generally say to the town, we're going to change our zoning, everybody's like freaks out the worst, they'll have the worst possible thought of what that could mean. If you have a specific proposal for a specific site,
Right.
and say,
Exactly.
this is what we need to do.
Right.
There's going to be some grumbling in the immediate area, I'm sure, but there'll also be support. And it won't be as scary as sort of let's take on the whole zoning question. We don't want to do that. We want to target it to achieve something. So those would be my priorities. I guess I'd add to that, finding one house at a time, using the habitat model to solve a problem here or there, or to create an opportunity here or there.
Okay, you can have 4.
All right, well, those are my 4. I probably have more, but I'll shut up now.
Okay. Randy?
I would like to second the eloquent speaking of my colleague to my right. I have my hat on, so I've got my developer thinking on. And my priority is absolutely to find a larger piece of land. It doesn't have to be 50 acres, it can be 10. We do have 10, 12, what is it, the one on 102 is 20 some odd with.
27, but it only has like 7 acres.
So it has 7 acres that you can build on. You can build 30 units on 7 acres.
Yeah, sure.
Very attractively, as long as you have a very good designer. So my personal priority above all things, we've done a lot, I'm very, very proud of the fact that we've come together. We've learned a great deal. We've had a lot of good people come and talk to us, and we've had some skirmishes, and we've had some clearly shots in the back. And I think that is indicating that we're going to have some more. But that the priorities ought to be, in my opinion, to do something. We're tired, I've now reached the point, I don't want to talk about anything anymore except a project that's real and that we really focus our energies. I'm very, very much in favor of having a really good ADU bill as a secondary, and also to have 2-family homes as a right, and not to have to hire a lawyer to get, because Linda was exactly the woman that bent my ear for about 30 minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
She was very, very, very upset by what she had to go through. The fact that you were helpful to her, was great and it was approved, but she just felt that she went to hell and back to get that done. And she had to spend, another $5,000 on lawyers, which detracted. Now, she is, as all the things that you say, she's a developer herself. She cares about affordable housing. She did donate 2 of the properties that she was involved with. So there are people in our town with vision and with ability to act, and they're more than just one. There are others that we know of who want to make a difference and have the money and are so willing to step up and do something. So I put my priority on, I think, your second one. I would like to say that I personally think we have worked very hard to try to help Pine Woods and have been slapped in the face 3 or 4 times. And my opinion is Pine Woods is on its own. And I know that Patrick doesn't feel that way, and that's fine. And the town, if the town wants to use its money, I just don't feel that we should use a minute more of our time trying to do anything to help them unless they're willing to do the most fundamental thing there, which is to get a plan, to get a set of, to get the studies that are needed to find out what's wrong there and get a plan. But they have lied to us, and they have done things that are, demonstrate that they're not interested in finding out what the problems are.
Can I
So,
ask a quick question related to that? My understanding when I look back at the project was that the South, South Berkshire CDC was involved initially as a partner with Construct to start out with. I guess Construct was the actual developer, but they partnered with the CDC.
I'm not aware, do you know that, Patrick? I don't know that. Whether the CDC
Something I read, it was the CDC. And CDCs are typically very mission-oriented, and so I was wondering if there was any possibility of going back and trying to involve the CDC again, or if it's just you're stuck with Construct. Anyway, I just wanted to ask
Right now,
if there was an issue.
they are the owner, and I don't believe CDC has any ownership, is that correct?
Right.
That they have the title to the land.
Okay.
And they have the obligations. So, but that's my personal opinion. I'm really, really offended by their behavior. So I would like to say action is my absolute first priority. And that we should move and use all of our energies and all our focus to ideally do, this is my priority, a larger scale project somewhere between 30 and 50 units. And then have, if we can, at the same time, have smaller, 1 or 2 off situations. Are there any things that is the town taking anything in tax, Patrick? Title?
There's a number of properties that are in a process. It takes several years to complete the process.
Right. Is there anything close?
I hope not.
Okay. So they're probably.
Not a good,
Let's face it, you're taking somebody's property.
not a good sign.
Generally, it's somebody who dies without heirs. Property around here is worth way more than what the tax liability would be. It's generally is people, what is it called, intestate or something like that?
Intestate.
Intestate, yeah. Intestinal, something like that, I don't know. Yeah.
Is large scale rental or homes?
No, I believe in home ownership. I think that that's what we want here. We want people who own, who are vested in our community.
All
And
right.
notwithstanding what their house cost, they are more than able to participate.
Well, there is this thing over in GB that they're doing with Habitat building. Houses over
Yeah,
there.
On North Plain Road.
North Plain, which if they can pull that off, it's very ambitious. Because then you're looking to have to subsidize a couple of dozen homes, not just pick off one here and there and come up with the difference.
Well, that too, and the town is putting in the electric and the sewer and the water, so they're doing all that.
Big infrastructure contribution, and I don't know about the land acquisition.
I think they may have given them the land.
All right, so there's a big step up right there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy, but
Yeah.
just because it's not
Nothing
going to be
worthwhile ever
easy.
is.
Right, and just because it's not going to be easy and not just because, oh, we don't have any, we just have
Can't
to
stop
find them under the rocks
Yep,
somewhere.
yep. No, I think that's good.
priority.
Put that down there.
Liz?
Liz,
Yeah,
you have to take notes while you're talking?
I know. I took a few notes before I started.
Watch the tape after.
I think we need to approach I agree with Michaela. I think we need to approach some people to be advisors to us. They don't necessarily have to be on the board, but I think Michael, who was there, I think Linda Shapiroff, who's got experience doing this. I think there are people who really know already what they can do and what's needed. And maybe it doesn't have to be a gigantic millions and millions of dollars, that maybe we can do something now with their input because they seem to be able to do it. I don't want to write construct off the map. I think when they're ready, I think they should come to us. I mean, I just don't think we can say, this is what you have to do. I think they need to come to us when it's time. I don't think all of this has to be homeownership, quite frankly. I don't know about you, but when I got out of college in my first 10 years, I didn't own a house. I didn't know where I was going to be. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that's what I wanted, was a rental. If you look at most of the people, the young people in Boston, they're not buying them either. They want a rental. They're starting to get started. I don't think
They
it's.
can't afford the rentals anymore in Boston.
Oh, I have a child there. There are some that are really, you get a roommate, and that's what we did here. I lived on Park Street for $300 a month, and I had to get a roommate, so it was $150 each. And we ate, we got pizza shells, 3 pizza shells for $1, and we got, it was serious stuff. But it's doable, and it's what gives you character. I mean, part of this is we're talking about the character of the town. Well, there's something about the character of, we don't just give you everything. I'm sorry, my kids have to work for what they want. And they will work towards saving money to do what it is they do. And yes, we should have something that's affordable, but I think we need to get something that's in there now that they can do. And I think that's a possibility. I think one of the things we need to do, though, is bring the whole community together. I see it really separating. There's the us versus them. And that is just unhealthy for the town.
So where do you see that? Where does it actually manifest? I mean, you talk to a lot of people, so you're really plugged in.
I went to a party the other day and I had never, I'd never met this woman before. And she had something nasty to say about the select board. And she was second homeowner and she was talking about, whatever it was. And I said, that didn't pass, right? Oh. Well, she had been so worked up, and this hadn't passed quite a while ago.
Fake news.
And so, well, that's just it. And I think we've got to do something that brings the community together, whether it's a town party to show that we are friendly, and we're okay. But something, because we're missing the human factor here. If you can get the humanity back here, which I think we're missing some of, I think you're going to see more people coming to help us do what we want to do, because they'll see what it is that we're missing.
It's a great idea, Patrick. Can you plan a party?
Many before. I did the Laurel Hill SBA party during the herbicide litigation, specifically for the purpose of bringing people together, and actually worked.
I want to do it with you.
Yeah.
In
I told
terms
you
of,
about that July 4th party, Patrick, we should have.
Yeah, I think it's, I think that, I hear there's a public road at Mackinac Heights, maybe we can plan it up there.
Yeah.
I just heard that at the second homeowner meeting.
Didn't they used to have street parties?
Yeah, I'm kidding.
Didn't they used to
Yeah.
have street parties, like, there was I had small children, so I never went. But they used to cut, just kind of what they do in Great Barrington. They cordon off the street and they had a band and people come. Let's give us something to do. Okay, that's fun, because we need something to do that's fun that will bring the community.
in terms of all the people that have basically said, use the word action and getting something done, I'm reminded of a famous quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has.
I think your idea of outreach is really important. I think people need to know more about us and what we're doing, what our principles are, what our plans are.
My little town this weekend on Sunday from 12 to 6 had cordoned off a part of the, off street from the main road and had several bands. It was supported by the Lakeville Journal. Several bands, and it had food trucks and other food things. And then we had tents where our kind of local organizations were providing money and trying to bring in members. And there were kids everywhere and face painting. And it was just terrific. And it didn't seem to me that it would cost a huge amount. I think it's a lot of organization, but those events do bring people together and in a really positive way.
Did everybody go or anyone
I have to go.
to Zucchini Festival in West Stockbridge?
What's that?
Did anyone?
Make it-
Not this,
No,
no.
not this
I've
year.
been, but
Oh, the Zucchini Festival?
You have, Patrick, if you have to go,
No, I want to go. I want to, my turn.
thanks.
Yeah. A couple of things. One, with such a high percentage of the homes that we have as constructed before 1980, I think that we should strongly consider a community block grant program similar to what we did with Dalton, where you can actually give qualifying homeowners, money for a new roof or to paint their house or to do the things that not only improve the neighborhood, but also improve that lot. We've got a program right now that got a little delayed with COVID, but that we got a grant from the state on to do it. And I think that to the degree that a significant amount of revenue comes in, if some developers who will need to pay based on the residential inclusionary bylaw elect not to build but to pay instead, I think that looking at renovations of existing housing stock would have broad support within the town. And I think would create a lot of goodwill, in terms of like qualifying homeowners. It's not, it's a community block grant, so it gets administered independently. It is unlikely this board would review applicants. When we approved it with the 4 towns we did Dalton with, there's a blind evaluation process that no one in town has access to who the applicants are or what the selection process is. It was managed by, we outsourced it to somebody in the Dalton town office as the administrator, basically the equivalent to Erica.
So,
I think that.
So Patrick, for that, we already have, the town already has.
We have $200,000, which is 4 or 5 renovations, 6 renovations. I think that if to the degree that we have ongoing funding, we might want to look at expanding that program or making a more quasi-permanent type of thing.
So what would be the role of this group in that
I
process?
mean, it would be, we're going to have somewhere between several hundred and several $1 million, and it would be taking some percentage of that and putting it into a community block grant.
Remind me where the millions are coming from?
What?
Remind me where the millions are coming from?
I wrote a residential inclusionary bylaw for the last town meeting, which was approved. And the first property, which is several dozens of property of high-end homes that are being built, that is required to either include some which would be affordable or to pay into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is likely to be completed in terms of special permit in the next 6 months.
Where is that?
I'd rather, we'll just leave it at that.
Oh, okay.
It's not a secret, but it's
Can you send me that bylaw?
it's on the town website, but yeah, sure, yeah.
I looked at the town's existing.
I can send it to you, yes.
It passed at the last town meeting.
It was passed.
Yeah. It might be still with the Attorney General, but nevertheless, it froze the zoning. So the first thing I would like, just to get back to this,
right.
first thing I think we should do is look at a community block grant program. The second is, I think that in writing the residential inclusionary bylaw and in pitching it at town meeting, I specifically represented that we're going to have a crisis at Pine Woods and that having money, which we could leverage into, for example, a higher priority for the kind of renovation tax credits that would be needed to do things at the scale of what Pine Woods may need, that would help us do it. It's not, if there's 2 or 3 million in need, it's not spending that entire amount in terms of this funds, but it's in spending enough to leverage it into being a higher priority at the state level. I understand some of Randy's frustrations. I nevertheless also see that I believe Construct is between a rock and a hard place, that, without a clear way to compete effectively for highly competitive grants, that it doesn't make sense to deploy resources to, necessarily start the work until we have the funding in place to help actually not only pay for that evaluation, but also to have a strategy that will have a realistic chance of success in terms of actually completing the renovations. So I think looking at that is important. I agree that a property like the 102 or Levan property or whatever might make sense for us to look at. Let's remember that we hear what Carolyn Valley and the people from Berkshire Housing and everyone else who's talked to us has said, which is that we've got to deliver properties with water, sewer, and that are cleared to get there. All right. We're writing a water and sewer plan this year, master plan. We've got a lot of concurrent items on the burner, and we're going to have to make sure that we are working well with others to make sure that we're not just thinking about those properties as what the responsibilities of this group are, but also thinking about them in terms of how they fit with the water and sewer plan. And is there water and sewer available there now? And what else is on there? And what is the cost to clear those properties? So I think that that's a good long-term goal. I think it's one that is the hardest to get done because it involves working with so many decision makers in town, including anything that involves water and sewer has got to go to town meeting. So that takes it off that purely 40B decision, But nevertheless, not to say we shouldn't try. We could try it. I love the idea of the pocket stuff. I think that the habitat thing with the 5 to 10 units, we've been in for some conversations with some folks in town who may help us make that work. And I think that's great. I don't think we should completely write off the idea of Heaton Court and how we might, there is that lot next to it, and how we might take a look at what our senior housing needs are. That is 100% affordable now. It only is required to be 70%. We could conceivably do something that was a mix of market, which would have a different rental, obviously, and subsidized. And I just want to kind of finally say, Michael points out that in municipal government, in things like bylaws and elections, 60% is a landslide. All right, 60% is a landslide. That's it. Okay, our job is not to throw parties and get 100% of the community agreement, because we're never going to get it. And I can tell you firsthand, people will ascribe motives to you don't have. People will say mean things about you. People will do a lot of things, and that's okay, because 60% is a landslide. And I am convinced that every single thing we talked about today, we can get 60% of the votes for. And I'm less concerned about what some of the voices in the room are going to say, because if we wait until everybody agrees, we will never get anything done. I was reading the article on Great Barrington and Lee Davis's 1% real estate tax, which I'm not proposing, everybody out there on the internet. And the first thing they did, the first thing that the people didn't like it did, they said, that's the most divisive thing I ever heard. All right? Because that's the go-to. That is the go-to when someone disagrees these days, is they're going to accuse you of that. And you know what? I think we can get ATUs done in some form. I think we're going to have to take a look at STRs. We got that done the first time. I didn't agree with the thing we produced, but we did short-term rentals. I think that the two-family, I think we can get all these things done, because what I know is that the residential inclusionary bylaw passed with a 10-to-1 vote. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund authorizing bylaw passed with a 10-to-1 vote in this town. I am not concerned with the voters of this town. I think the voters of this town are smart, and I think they're committed, and I think that most of them understand that we've got some challenges we're going to have to face, and that's going to involve some hard choices that not everyone's going to agree on, and that is okay, because that's how democracy makes decisions.
And you only need a 50%
I get that.
majority vote to get zoning if it involves housing production.
And nothing has ever been close to that since in the 4 years I've been on the board. They've all been 8, 9, 10 to 1. And I think we can continue to do that. What's hard is it's not easy to write this stuff, but we can get that done too.
Good model.
There's a couple of us who have access to town council, and we can get input, and we can, we're not all going to get, including me, by the way, we're not all going to get our way. It's okay. But the most important thing we can do is we can focus on the fact that this is consensus government. We don't have a mayor. We don't have, we got to work with the planning board, and we got to work with the community preservation, and we got to work with partners like Construct, and we got to be ready for consensus. Because if you think that it's my way or the highway, you're never going to get anything done. I've won some battles in this town. I've lost some battles in this town, and they're not really battles. They're conversations with friends, and that's how you make progress. And that's, I think, what we're faced with this. So those are my priorities.
So coming out of this, I think I can after this, kind of summarize what kind of were the highest priorities, maybe 5 or 6 of them. Because I think in large part, we're not that far apart.
No, I don't either.
Stuff. So, but I think the real question coming forward and for our next month or two is a kind of work plan for what are the next steps? What do we need to find out more about in order to pursue some of these initiatives?
Cool, but I think the step before that is we're doing a survey that is going to go out to the town. And I think our next meeting really needs to be focused on the results of the survey and a summary of what some of the ideas of this board are. And then I think that we need to, finally finish the housing production plan. And then from there, we can start to figure out what implementation looks like. But I don't think we should, this isn't yet our plan. I think that the survey is a really important part of this process. The housing production plan has to be approved by the town, let's remember. And so we're going to have to kind of like really make sure that we're building consensus around what these ideas are. And this is a process that's going to happen at town meeting next year in May. So let's not get ahead
I
of
would
it.
think that the survey is going to point to all the various things that we put on our.
I do too, but let's not assume.
We've covered a lot of bases with our 3 top priorities each.
Yeah, but let's not assume that some of the folks, so we're probably going to get several hundred responses to this, and there might be some ideas we haven't considered in there. Who knows?
So I would argue that, yes, we definitely, the survey is an important part of it, and we should take that into account. And by the way, the survey, Michael just finished putting up on SurveyMonkey today, so we'll get the notice out probably as a separate notice through Stockbridge Updates with the link, and I'll send it through on the second homeowners listserv so that it's on that.
Good.
And
Could you send
and
it
it's-
to all of us?
Yeah, when I get it. I don't have it yet.
When Michael
Yes.
tells you.
And also, Michael said it's up on the town website as of tomorrow morning, probably. I don't think it's there right now, but it will be very shortly. And we have a return date of September 15th. So we can, go over those results at our next meeting, hopefully shortly after September 15th. And then we can incorporate those into what are things. I guess my question would be, so is there anything productive we could be exploring more and finding out more about in this next month without locking in a plan?
Look at it.
Saying, I think, rather than have us all just sit and twiddle our thumbs.
You may have heard this before, but that 1956, research paper by a guy named Tybot talks about how people vote with their feet. In other words, they look at schools, they look at taxes, they look at zoning and what they're able to do, and they make decisions based on that. This town and all of South County is going to be dominated in the next 45 days with the regional school district agreement. I hope to God it passes. I've spent about 200 hours on it. We'll see. And I think that it's not only what we're doing is absolutely essential, but that is going to be the big conversation between now and the end of September. It's going to start to ramp up in the next week or two. There's going to be an 8-town select board meeting on August 28th. It's going to be a huge deal in terms of what all of these towns are talking about. It's the future of education. So I think what we want to do is to kind of position our efforts and initiatives and conclusions at sort of the timeframe around kind of the conclusion of that process, because people only have so much bandwidth and that's going to suck up all the air in the room. So, I think that looking at this fall as the timeframe to kind of get all this done is great, but we have time to get the survey out and collate the results and debate those results and do a second pass at this based on, looking at what these priorities were. And I think that looking at the end of the year is like a really realistic, come up with a draft plan, unless you guys have a different thought on what our schedule is.
Well, I was just thinking that there might be some things that we could productively do as homework
Yeah, absolutely.
the next month, rather than just sit around and wait for the next meeting. But whatever.
No,
I know you're going to be very busy, but
I have suggested our next meeting be the 21st or 22nd, which is a Thursday or a Friday. Fridays are not ideal,
It's the 24th.
August or September?
September.
Yeah, September 15th, I thought.
That's the date for the,
That's the day for the
We
survey.
won't have the analysis by
The
then
idea was to try to have a little time to see what,
to do the
survey.
analysis, to get the.
Yeah,
So,
21st is a Thursday.
yes, and the 22nd, we
That's a
have met on
Friday.
Fridays before.
I think I'll be out of town on that Friday, so
We're
Thursday.
not going
Thursday.
to another meeting you can't come to.
Is the 21st the second or fourth Tuesday, Thursday rather?
Third.
It's the third.
Third.
It's the third? Okay, so that's not a select board.
It's the third Thursday.
Oh, wait a second.
We meet before.
Do you meet on Thursday?
We meet the second and the fourth. I just want to know because the select board means that.
That's the third Thursday.
It's the third Thursday. Are you out of town then, too?
No. I leave for Colorado on the 22nd.
Oh, we're not doing that again to you.
I'm sorry about that.
21st is the Thursday, that's the third one.
Okay,
Let's do the 21st.
are you here?
I'm here the 21st.
Okay. Jan, it's okay to do Thursday? Karen, can you come?
Yes, that works for me.
Liz?
What time?
Same, 4 to 6.
4.
Here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, so the 21st has it
Apparently.
for everybody?
So but you raised a
Michaela,
question.
you'll be back.
Yep.
We'll be very happy to have you back.
It's almost
Happy to see you all.
almost midnight, Michaela. You must be ready for bed.
Oh, my goodness.
12:48 here.
Oh, my
gosh.
Where is she? Oh, 12.
I have tomorrow off. It's a national holiday. I have tomorrow off.
Where are you?
Greece.
I'm in Greece.
You're in Greece. Oh, my goodness. Where in Greece?
Zakynthos. It's an island in the Ionian Sea.
Well, we forgot to.
Midnight there, so let's let her go. Make a motion, we adjourn.
Good.
Oh, fantastic.
I second that motion.
Have a wonderful, wonderful trip. That's fantastic. Thank you for
So much for
joining in.
joining us.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
thank you guys.
Okay, we have to do this,
You're
we have to
doing
do this
that.
properly, Patrick.
Oh, yes.
To adjourn, I seconded. Now, each one, Michaela, do you?
Hi, Michaela.
Wait,
Bye.
bye.
You have to say aye, Bruce.
Yes.
Oh, what?
Aye, just go around the room.
Hi, Bruce.
Aye, bye.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Rennie.
Liz, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. We hit the.
We are adjourned.